Welcome to Pen and Perspective, where the story always knows more than it's telling. Every word is intentional. Every silence holds a truth. Let's get into it. I grew up knowing I was different. I was the baby of three, two older sisters, both confident, both brilliant, both adored. And then there was me, soft-spoken, artistic, the kind of boy who lingered on color and movement, who noticed the grain of a table before the object sitting on top of it. My mother used to say I felt things too deeply. My father used to say I walked too light on my feet. Neither ever said what they meant, but both made sure I heard it. But my sisters, they understood me before I understood myself. They were the ones who told me softness wasn't a flaw. They stood in front of me at school when boys tried to pick fights because of how I talked or moved. They were the ones who brushed the dust off my shirt, wiped the tears before anyone else saw, and told me that the world would eventually catch up to the way people like me love things. One sister taught me how to braid hair. The other taught me how to stand still when someone tried to embarrass me. Together, they made me feel bigger than the tiny box both the world and our parents tried to shove me into. They were also the first to tell me I didn't owe anyone an explanation for who I was becoming. And even when life got loud and adulthood pulled us in different directions, they stayed close. When our parents criticized my voice or my clothes or my art, my sisters rolled their eyes at the table just loud enough for me to see. Little acts of rebellion, the kind only siblings can get away with. They buffered the blow every time the world tried to flatten me. Being effeminate meant I was teased before I even knew what the teasing was supposed to mean. Kids call you gay long before you know anything about yourself. And when you hear it enough, curiosity becomes defiance. So I tried it. Men. Once. Then again. Never in a way that made me question my sexuality, just in a way that told me what I liked. Men were cool, fun. They sometimes quieted the noise. Turns out sexuality is less rigid than people pretend, and curiosity doesn't always mean identity. I appreciated my girlfriend for helping me see that it's all very nuanced. But my family didn't care about nuance. They cared about appearance, so I built my own identity far from theirs, an identity rooted in art, in beauty, in those intangible things that felt like oxygen to me. Stretching at sunrise with a cup of tea, letting the day soften before the world touched me, moving my body slowly, eating well because I felt better that way. Stillness didn't come easy. I had to earn that part. By the time I met the friend group, I was already living in my own version of truth. They didn't ask me to shrink. They didn't ask me to harden. They just let me be. Walter, especially. He never made jokes about my voice or my clothes, or the fact that I wore linen like it was a religion. He just let me exist. That's a rare gift. That's why the guilt bites the way it does. Because before the affidavit, before the beating, before I understood the gravity of anything, there was Dante. He came to my studio one evening while I was prepping for an installation. Golden hour light hitting the canvases just right, music low, tea cooling beside me. He walked in with that casual confidence, the kind that makes you feel like the moment is already decided. He laid a document on my table and said, "We're all coming together to make sure Walter gets the help he really needs." It sounded like community. It sounded like support. It sounded like love. Manipulation rarely feels like danger in the moment. I glanced at the paper, saw Walter's name, saw phrases like concern, well-being, protective action. Dante talked while I skimmed, fast, smooth, persuasive. He framed it like we were doing the right thing, and I knew. Somewhere deep down I knew something about it wasn't clean. But I also didn't know enough, and I didn't read enough. I just signed. I didn't know one signature would change everything. Update 1. For the next 2 weeks after I signed that paper, life went on exactly the way it always had. Sunrise stretches on the rug in my living room. Loose linen pants, herbal tea in a cup I threw myself. throwing myself into whatever art project I desired. My days were still soft around the edges, glazing bowls, rearranging displays, teaching private lessons to people who wanted to feel more connected to the clay, whatever that meant for them. And for a while, the signature felt like nothing. A nudge, a favor, a tiny moment I didn't look too closely at. And the trapdoor opened. I was in the studio smoothing the lip of a vase when Kiara's name lit up my phone. "Brian, get to Cedars. Walter's been in an accident." Everything inside me dropped. I wiped my hands, grabbed my keys, didn't even bother to clean the clay from under my nails. By the time I pulled into the hospital parking lot, the others were already there, clustered near the hallway outside Walter's room, tense, frantic, confused. When I walked in and saw him lying there, bruised, wired to monitors, the kind of still that makes your throat close, I felt the air leave my chest. But the real punch came when he said, frustrated and hoarse, "They're saying my blood alcohol level was elevated, but I didn't drink. I literally just left the office with Tay. I haven't had a drink all day." Sandra's voice cracked. "You're more of a social drinker anyway." Michelle nodded hard, right on cue. Everyone comforted him, questioned the officers, insisted it had to be a mistake. I forced out something thin, something useless. Why would they even say that? Cowardice in a question. I felt Kiara's eyes on me, too long, too sharp. Not accusing, just noticing. And noticing from Kiara is dangerous. Dante avoided my gaze completely. Wouldn't look at me. Wouldn't look at Walter. Wouldn't look at anything that reflected back what he'd done. And then the officers walked in, calm, procedural, unbothered by the chaos they were about to detonate. "We need to place you under arrest." Sandra grabbed Walter's hand. Michelle gasped. Kiara cursed under her breath. Terrell demanded explanations. And Walter tried to sit up, voice cracking. "For what? I told y'all I wasn't drunk." But they cuffed him to the bed anyway. Gave a string of legal jargon no one could hear over the sound of Sandra breaking. The door shut. His voice disappeared. And outside the hospital, everyone spiraled. Rage, sorrow, confusion. Everyone except me. My entire body felt hollow, cold, like I was standing next to the person I had unknowingly helped bury. When I got in the car, I didn't even start the engine. Just stared ahead and felt everything collapsing inward. I saw T walking toward his car and something clicked. My hands were shaking when I opened my phone. "Can you come to my house? I need to talk to you." I sent it to T. Greaves. He replied in under a minute, "On my way." When I made it to the house, he was already there. T. Greaves came into my apartment, took one look at me, and closed the door gently like he already knew something was broken. I told him everything, the paper, the language I didn't read, the way Dante framed it, the way I didn't question it, the moment in the hospital when Walter said he hadn't been drinking, the way my stomach fell apart hearing it. I think I did something I can't undo," I said. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just listened with that quiet intensity he has, the kind that makes you realize the truth has nowhere to hide. When I finished, he stood up slowly. "I'll look into things," he said, "and I'll get back to you." Then he left. And when the door closed, I knew. My life had just split clean down the middle. Update 2. It had been 2 full weeks of silence. 2 weeks since I'd sat in my living room holding a cup of ginger tea I'd never drank. 2 weeks since I'd told T. Greaves everything and watched the way his eyes tightened, like he was holding back questions he already knew the answers to. 2 weeks since Walter was taken out of that hospital room in handcuffs and Dante stopped acknowledging I even existed. Life kept going, but in a warped way. My sunrise stretching didn't hit the same. My tea tasted metallic. My routines felt like habits borrowed from a calmer version of myself. I still opened the gallery every morning because small business life doesn't care about your personal disaster. My assistant commented that I looked fatigued. I laughed it off. But my laughter sounded like it came from behind a locked door. And Dante? The silence from him was loud. Every missed call, every delivered but never read text. Every moment I caught myself hoping he'd reach out just to explain why he dragged me into something that could cost someone their life. I had to swallow the truth. He wasn't avoiding me out of guilt. He was avoiding me because he saw me as disposable. By the end of that second week, the silence itself felt like a countdown. It was past midnight when I closed the gallery. The street was quiet. Too quiet for Culver City on a Friday. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps rush behind me. Before I could turn, something hit the back of my knees. I went down hard. Then the kicks came, fast, practiced, efficient. Not enough to kill me, just enough to make a point. One voice snarled next to my ear. "Wrong man in jail. We know what you did." I tried to say something, anything, but all that came out was a dry rasp. They didn't care. When it was over, they jogged off like they were clocking out of a shift. I laid there for a few seconds, cheek pressed against the cool pavement, trying not to throw up. Everything hurt. My ribs screamed. My knees were throbbing. My face felt swollen already. I crawled the last few feet to my car, hands shaking as I unlocked it. When I got into the car, my hands were shaking so bad I had to sit there with the door open, one foot on the pavement, just breathing. Every inhale felt like it scraped something. My ribs weren't right. My face felt tight, swollen, in places I didn't want to touch yet. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying not to panic. That's when I saw her, across the street, under the busted streetlight, just standing there. Red Ralph's work polo, black work pants. Name tag that said El Monroe. Her braids were pulled back neat, like she'd just clocked out or was about to clock in somewhere that didn't care what kind of night I was having. She wasn't scared, wasn't curious, wasn't watching like people watch accidents. She looked at me the way somebody looks at a bad decision that finally collected its debt. Not mad, not smug, just disappointed. Her head tilted a little, a slow shake, like, damn, you really did that to yourself. My chest tightened harder than the pain. I dropped my eyes, sucked in a breath that burned all the way down, waited for the world to steady. When I looked back up, she was gone. No footsteps, no car pulling off, no shadow slipping between buildings, just empty sidewalk and that broken light buzzing like it had been there alone the whole time. I shook my head and forced my breath steady enough to text. "Mia, I just got jumped. Call me." A minute passed, then two. Then it to Greaves, "Sit tight." That was it. No questions, no comfort, no instructions, just sit tight. I sat in the dark parking lot for a long time, forehead against the steering wheel, trying not to cry. Not from pain, though the pain was bad, but from the sick realization that I had finally stepped into something I couldn't finesse my way out of. Driving home was agony. Every bump in the road lit up my ribs. Getting out the car felt like pulling myself out of my own body. The moment I got inside, I locked the door twice. And then I broke down. I woke up stiff, bruised, barely able to lift my arms. Every movement felt like a reminder. I iced my face, made turmeric tea, stretched as much as my ribs allowed. My sisters always told me, even when life knocks you on your ass, baby, moisturize and move something. So I did. Barely. I still opened the gallery though, hoodie pulled low. Concealer layered under tinted moisturizer, skills, courtesy of two sisters who refused to let the world see them undone. Customers came and went. None of them noticed anything except my quietness. But Kira texted a reminder about her gathering the next evening, And I knew I couldn't skip it. Skipping would mean questions I wasn't ready to answer. I wore a hoodie and loose sweats, something I never wore unless I was painting. Even as I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. By the time I pulled up to Kiara's house, I had layered concealer, tinted moisturizer, and a prayer. The swelling was down, but the bruising, yeah, there was no fully hiding that. The second I stepped through the door, conversations dipped. Not all the way quiet, just enough for me to notice. Michelle was the first one to walk over. Michelle never misses anything, never. She squinted at me, then leaned in closer, eyebrows knitting. "Brian, what happened to your face?" My stomach tightened, but I forced a laugh, light, airy, the kind of laugh meant to skip across the surface of a truth I had no intention of touching. "Oh, that? I fell in the back lot behind the shop. You know how the pavement dips a little back there." Kiara didn't even hide the look she gave me. "On flat ground?" I kept the smile going, even though it felt like it was stretching skin that didn't want to move. "You know how the pavement dips a little back there. You know none of our knees work like they used to, girl. I'm getting old." A couple people chuckled. Michelle didn't. She held my gaze for a full 3 seconds, long enough for me to feel like she could peel the lie straight off my face. But she let it go. The conversation shifted. People went back to their food and wine. The music turned up a bit. But every time someone glanced my way, I felt it. They didn't believe me. They just let me have the lie. And for the first time that week, I realized something new. Hiding the truth from them hurt almost as much as the beating did. I was on my couch in my sweats, Captain Crunch getting soggy in the bowl, TV on mute, scrolling my timeline. It was around 9, too early to feel this tired. My ribs still hurt when I breathed too deep. Not sharp anymore, just that dull reminder pain. I was halfway through scrolling nothing when my phone lit up. "Reggie?" I didn't really feel like talking, but Reggie doesn't call like that, so I answered. "Yo," I said, trying to keep my voice normal. He sounded out of breath, like he'd been pacing or running or both. "B," he said. "You busy?" I sat up. Spoon clinked against the bowl. "Nah, what's going on?" There was a pause. "Somebody tore my shop up, man." I didn't say anything at first. My mind went straight to broken glass and graffiti. Dumb kids, a window, something fixable. "What you mean, tore it up?" I asked. "They came in overnight, man," he said. His voice cracked. Chairs flipped, mirrors smashed, clippers broken. Everything. My chest tightened like somebody wrapped a cord around it. That wasn't random. That was a message. Same kind of message my body had learned how to read already. "You call the cops?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Yeah," he said. "They came, took pictures, left." I stared at the wall, cereal forgotten. "I'm on the way," I said. "You don't gotta—" "I'm on the way," I repeated. I hung up and just sat there for a second, heart thudding. Reggie didn't deserve this. And I knew, this wasn't just about Reggie. I opened the group chat. "Brian, Reggie's shop on Crenshaw got hit. I'm heading there now." The dots started popping up immediately. Sandra, Michelle, Kiara. I grabbed my keys, didn't even bother changing clothes. On the drive over, my hands wouldn't stop shaking, because all I could think was, this is spreading. At the shop. From the outside, the place didn't even look that bad. Door open, lights on, open sign flickering like it didn't know whether to stay hopeful or not. Then I stepped inside, and my body locked up. Glass everywhere, chairs destroyed, mirrors cracked. Reggie stood in the middle of it, hands on his hips like he didn't know where to look first. "Damn," I said. My voice came out wrong, too tight. "Reg," he tried to joke, tried to smile. I couldn't, because I saw it immediately. The register was open, the money untouched, the cords cut clean through. This wasn't vandalism. This was intent. I felt Sandra touch my arm. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied, way too fast. I kept my eyes off the register. If I looked at it too long, I felt like I might throw up. Taylor came in a few minutes after me. She hovered near a broken mirror, staring at her reflection like it might confess something back to her. "Who would do this?" she asked softly. No one answered. I already had theories, and none of them were good. Dante came in late. Of course he did. Crisp shirt, calm face, eyes moving slow like he was cataloging damage, not feeling it. "You pissed somebody off, Reg," he said. That's when something cold slid into my stomach. He didn't sound shocked. He sounded curious. I watched him watch the room, watch Taylor. A thought crossed my mind that I didn't want to name yet. This is bigger than Walter. The cleanup crew. When the cleanup crew showed up with brand new chairs and vacuums, everybody else looked relieved, grateful. I didn't. Because nothing moves that fast unless somebody already knew this was coming. I stood there, ribs aching, watching men I didn't know fix damage I didn't understand yet. And all I could think was, first me, now Reggie. I swallowed hard, because if this was what reminders looked like, I didn't know who was next. The text came mid-morning. Dante's at Cedars. Bad. I stared at it for a long time before I drove over. Cedars had a way of making you feel like you were walking into judgment. Too much light, too many echoes, too many things that smelled like endings. By the time I got there, the group had already gone quiet in the elevator. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, but that tense, shared stillness people get when they know they're about to see something they don't want to see. When we stepped into Dante's room, yeah, it hit harder than I expected. One eye swollen shut, jaw thick and uneven under the swelling, ribs bruised high enough that every breath looked like it cost him something. Leg braced and elevated the way you only see when something snapped the wrong direction. He still tried to smirk. Still tried to be Dante, even though the face he was using to do it barely worked. Michelle jumped in first with the joking tone she uses when she's scared. Kiara hovered with that emotional math running behind her eyes. Sandra stood guard, arms folded, reading him deeper than he wanted to be read. Terrell did his quiet attorney thing. And me? I stood by the window, hands in my pockets, trying like hell not to react. Because I knew this pain. Every bruise, every pull of the ribs, every way a breath cuts when someone puts their whole weight behind a punch. I felt all of this 2 nights ago. So when Dante said, couple kids, teenagers, that lie scraped every nerve in me, because I told my own lie just like that. Flat voice, short sentences, avoiding people's eyes, trying to outrun the truth with words that didn't fit. But while the others were questioning his story, I was watching something else. The way he couldn't look at me, that was the part that hooked in my chest. Because whatever got to him, it got to me first. And I didn't know if that was a warning, karma, or some twisted form of bookkeeping from whoever was pulling these strings. T. Greaves poked his head in, expression unreadable. When our eyes met, something silent passed between us. Understanding. As I walked out, he stepped close. His voice was low. We're looking into what happened. Expect movement soon. My stomach dropped. Movement meant the next domino was about to fall. The next morning, just after sunrise stretching, someone knocked softly on my door. I froze. It wasn't the frantic knock of danger. It was the quiet knock of people who believe they don't need to raise their voice to upend your life. 2 officers stood there, polite, hands visible, voices calm. "Mind if we come in, Mr. Bennett? We just want to ask a few questions." I let them in because I didn't know what else to do. They sat on my couch, asked about Dante, about Walter, about the paperwork. Their tone was gentle, almost warm. That scared me more than yelling ever could. They left after 10 minutes, thanking me for my cooperation. When the door closed, I stood in my living room surrounded by silence that felt heavy enough to crush bone. T. Greaves said movement was coming, but he didn't say from which direction, and as the morning light crawled across my floor, I realized I wasn't scared of getting caught. I was scared of what would happen before I got there. Final update. The night I got home from Cedars, I didn't even turn the lights on. I just stood in the middle of my living room, face throbbing, shirt sticking to dried blood I hadn't been brave enough to scrub off yet. My phone was still in my hand, open to the thread where I'd just texted my sisters. "I need y'all, not over the phone. Come tomorrow morning, please." They both responded within seconds. "We'll be there. First thing." I put the phone down, sat at the edge of my couch, and let my body finally feel all the things adrenaline had been suppressing. My ribs, my jaw, my fear, my shame. The whole ride home, I kept seeing those masked faces. I showered, barely slept, and opened the door the next morning before either sister could knock. They froze when they saw me. My oldest sister whispered my name like a prayer and a warning at the same time. My oldest sister whispered, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" I sat them down, told them everything. From the day Dante walked into my gallery smiling smooth as butter, to that damn affidavit I signed without reading, to hearing Walter claim he hadn't had a drink, to the hospital handcuffs, to T. Greaves showing up in my living room like Judgment Day, to the beating. Their faces went through every season. Shock turning into anger, anger turning into hurt, hurt turning into something quieter, heavier, fear. When I finished, neither of them said anything at first. They just looked at me like they were seeing their little brother at every age at the same time. 10, 15, 20, every version of me they tried to protect. My oldest spoke first. "Brian, you knew better. Not loud, not cruel, just true." My middle sister reached for my hand. "You don't deserve what happened to you," she said softly. "But you did make a terrible decision, and we're gonna deal with both truths, okay? Both. You fix what you can, little brother, and we'll walk with you through the rest." For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The next morning, the expose dropped. I woke to 30 missed texts and a notification lighting up my phone with Kendall's post. I clicked it with shaking hands. She didn't say my name. What she did say was, "The artsy friend who signed an affidavit." My sisters called immediately. "Brian, what are we looking at?" And all I could say was, I had no idea about this, or I would have told you." Because I didn't. This was bigger than anything I thought I was slipping into. Much bigger. They got Dante. My stomach dropped so hard I almost folded over. I didn't call anybody, didn't answer anybody. I just sat with my back against the wall, palms sweating. Dante had avoided me for weeks. I had avoided him back. But seeing him beaten, then seeing him in handcuffs in the news clip, that was when I knew the clock had run out for all of us. 2 days after that, Taylor got arrested. That shook my sisters, who showed up at my door without warning. They didn't even sit before asking, "Did you know Taylor was involved too?" I shook my head, hard. I swear to you, I had no idea. And I meant it. Whatever mistakes I made, I never imagined Taylor was tangled in this shit. My sisters saw the truth in my face and didn't press it. They just said, "Then it's time. You go to the police today. We're not letting them drag you out your own gallery. You walk in voluntarily." So, I put on the only clothes that didn't hurt against my ribs, and the three of us drove quietly to the precinct. The detectives who questioned me weren't warm, but they weren't aggressive either. It was careful, gentle even, not normal. I knew someone was pulling strings, and I knew exactly who. They walked me through every page of the plea agreement, every legal consequence, every condition. I signed. Then I was formally arrested, processed, photographed, and released. Suspended sentence, community service, mandatory ethics courses, probation. It was mercy, but it didn't feel like mercy. It felt like survival. Several days after I signed my deal, the city did something I never expected. The expose had spread so wide, so loud, that it forced the DA's office to reopen Walter's case. New eyes, new pressure, new scrutiny. And once the cracks from the night Walter was arrested started to show, everything unraveled faster than anyone predicted. Word hit the street early one morning. Walter was being released. I watched the clip online. Walter walking out of Men's Central, head high, jaw tight, surrounded by the people who never stopped fighting for him. And even though I knew I had no right to be there, I felt something shift in me. Relief. Regret. A kind of quiet gratitude that the truth had gotten out, even if it came at the cost of everything else. Several days later, Taylor pled out. I didn't go. I didn't reach out. I didn't even look up court footage or news recaps. I just sat in my studio staring at a half-finished sculpture and wondered how many decisions it really took for a life to fold in on itself. Her choices, mine, Dante's, everyone's silence. All of us orbiting something rotten without realizing how close we were to falling in. The day after Taylor pled out, Marcus texted me. Kim's, noon. I walked in and saw Marcus and Walter already seated. My whole body locked. Walter's face was unreadable. Marcus nodded at me to sit, and then, while I sat there sweating through my shirt, Marcus told Walter everything. Everything I told T. Greaves, everything I confessed, and more importantly, when. Everything I signed, everything I tried to undo. Walter listened without interrupting. No dramatic reactions, no yelling. Just the kind of quiet that feels like a weight pressing on your lungs. When Marcus finished, Walter looked at me for what felt like an hour. Hurt, betrayal, confusion. And underneath all of it, a flicker of something that wasn't forgiveness, but wasn't hatred either. "You're talking to the group," he finally said. "Not me, not Marcus, you." I nodded, because what else was there to do? We met at Kiara's house, same as always, but everything felt wrong, colder. I told them what I'd done, what I hadn't done, what I tried to fix. Nobody yelled, nobody stormed out, nobody embraced me either. It was the in-between, the limbo that comes after the truth but before decisions. When I left, nobody said goodbye, but nobody told me not to come back either. 2 nights later, I was cleaning brushes in the studio when my phone buzzed. "Walter, I want to run something by you." My heart dropped. I typed back, "Yeah, anything." He responded, "Crenshaw Project. Thinking about bringing in another creative partner. Don't make me regret considering you." I stared at the message for a long time. Walter didn't forgive me. The group didn't trust me again. I wasn't redeemed, but that text, it wasn't a clean slate, it was a crack in the wall. And sometimes cracks are how the light gets in.
Epilogue. Freedom hit different. Some mornings, Walter woke up expecting concrete walls, expecting the buzz of doors sliding open, expecting count time. But instead, he heard Sandra moving around the kitchen. He heard his youngest humming off-key in the hallway. He heard real life again, and every time it made his chest tight in a way he couldn't name. Being out wasn't the same as being free. Free required settling, and there was nothing settled inside him. The weeks after his release blurred and sharpened at the same time. People treated him like a survivor and a cautionary tale depending on the hour. Some neighbors hugged him too hard. Some crossed the street. The ones who avoided eye contact were the ones that bothered him more. His kids clung to him like they were afraid he'd disappear again. Sandra tried to act normal, but he could feel the edges of worry in everything she did. How she triple-checked the locks. How she watched him when she thought he wasn't looking. And he let her. Because he understood. Prison changed him. It changed the way he breathed, the way he scanned rooms, the way he trusted silence. And then there were the friend group dinners, reunions wrapped in awkward laughter. Everyone wanted to celebrate him, but the celebration was sitting on top of unresolved grief. 2 years had rearranged all their relationships, whether they admitted it or not. Taylor's arrest hit him in ways he still couldn't articulate. He missed the cousin she used to be, and he didn't recognize the one she had become. Brian, that was different. Walter didn't hate him, but forgiveness wasn't automatic. Brian's involvement had cut deep. And yet, the more he learned about how quickly Brian ran to T. Greaves that night, how he didn't wait, didn't stall, didn't try to save himself, something in Walter softened just an inch. Not enough to offer closeness, but enough to offer a bridge, a monitored bridge, a bridge with guardrails. And revenge, real revenge, sat in Walter's chest like a coal. A low burn, not hot enough to explode, hot enough to wait. He had been talking to Kiara a lot lately. Quiet conversations, back-channel whispers. She wasn't pushing him toward violence. She was pushing him toward strategy, charts, patterns, names, possibilities. She didn't want chaos. She wanted accuracy. His sister Ayla was different, brilliant, loyal, fearless, but also a fuse. If she got involved, there would be heat before precision. He kept stalling her involvement, telling her there were steps to take first, but he knew he couldn't keep her out forever. The family bloodline ran too strong for half measures. Work became his anchor. Taylor officially pled out. He sat on the back porch with Sandra that night, listening to the hum of the city, half grieving, half relieved, half angry. There were even halves to measure. Across the city, in a quiet office with no name on the door, the hidden figure sat behind a stack of redevelopment reports and folded newspapers. He slid one document aside, a city planning brief, and tapped the margin next to a name circled in ink, someone whose decisions shaped land, contracts, approvals, and the future Walter was stepping back into. Walter's release had shifted the board. Balance wasn't broken, but it had moved, and the hidden figure adjusted with it. He checked off one mental box, opened another file, because in his world, maintaining equilibrium wasn't personal. It was operational. And the next move was already in motion. To pen in perspective, if it sat in your spirit, let it linger. If it stirred something in you, don't ignore it. I'm Miana DK, and before I put my pen down, tell me, whose perspective should I sit with next?